Hi, friends. Today I'm going to talk about 7 things I would do if I got diagnosed with cancer again. I'm an 8-year cancer survivor at this point. I've been cancer free for over 5 years. And I don't really think about this often, but sometimes people ask me, what would I do? What would I do differently? And so I'm going to go into that. I'm going to talk about 7 different things. So, the number one thing that I would do if I were diagnosed again is I would meditate every day. I pretty much already meditate every day at this point, but I think I would really ramp it up because, in my own case, meditation was the one thing that proved to be such a game changer. And I talk about this all the time in my other videos, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But I was at a point in cancer treatment. I had finished my cancer treatment like 6 months earlier, and the tumor kept growing all throughout radiation. And when I got that follow up MRI, I couldn't believe that it was still growing. And not only that, but it seemed that it was infiltrating my bone marrow. It looked like it was stage 4 at that point. So I went into a deep, deep, dark depression and I basically just gave up all hope. And a few days later, I was asking myself, what can I do? What can I do? And I felt like I couldn't rely on the medical system anymore. So I felt like I had to do something. And that's when I turned to meditation. I really turned to it because I wanted a way to escape the fear and anxiety that I was feeling. It was really at an all-time high. I'd never really struggled so much with fear anxiety like prior to cancer, but it just became out of control and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And I knew I needed to get it under control. So I started meditation for that reason. But 3 months after I started my meditation and visualization practice, I went to get another MRI to prepare for this barbaric, morbid surgery that I was gonna have to get that was basically gonna give me a completely different life. And I didn't wanna have this surgery. I really, really didn't want to. But I went to get my MRI to prepare for the surgery, and lo and behold, the tumor had shrunk by about 30%. I can't prove that it was the meditation that did that, but the meditation shifted my mental beliefs and shifted my mind in such a profound way. And we know already from a lot of research that the mind can affect the body in very powerful ways. So I really don't discount the fact that meditation can have an effect on your nervous system, your immune system, your overall physiology. And so why wouldn't it affect cancer? And those are just my thoughts about that. But again, even if it had nothing to do with the shrinking of the tumor, the way that it shifted my mental state is worth it alone. Like I just 1 week after meditating, after starting my meditation practice, I was so beyond calm and I just like knew like everything was going to be okay. And I just felt this total inner peace and surrender. And I'm not saying everybody who meditates is going to have that experience, but that was my experience. And there's nothing but benefits in meditation if you look at the literature. And so it doesn't have to be a specific meditation. I used Joe Dispenza meditations, but I also think you could do mindfulness meditation, which is usually what's in the research. And it's just really powerful. So that would be my number one thing. Number two is I would listen to my intuition, especially when it comes to treatment decisions. I was at a crossroads where I had to choose either surgery or radiation. I couldn't do both. And I had a really hard time deciding. Ultimately, I tuned into my intuition, which has always been pretty strong for me anyway. But with meditation, it got even better. I tuned into my intuition and I knew that surgery was not the right avenue for me. And so that's what I would recommend. And that's what I would do if I were diagnosed again. I'd really tune into my intuition. I'd listen to my doctors. I'd hear about all the different options and I would do what I knew internally was right for me. The next thing is I would stay off Google. This might be a little bit controversial because when we get diagnosed, all we want to do is we want to Google and find out all the details. At least that's what I did. That's the very, very first thing that I did after I was diagnosed. But it put me in a really depressed, fearful state when I started Googling. I learned that the average person with this type of cancer only lives about 7 years. And so I carried that around for like a long time. And I was finally able to release that, like, just more recently, but it really put a heavy burden on me, and for a long time, I thought that I was only gonna live to be 42 years old, and so I walked around with this big weight, and so I wish I hadn't Googled, and so if I got diagnosed again, what I do instead is I would use AI, and I would prompt it with very specific and empowering questions. So my questions might be something along the lines are, what are the best case scenarios? Yes, what are my treatment options? But also, what are some examples of extraordinary responses to treatments, and things like that. So you can do that with AI, which is great. Google's just going to give you everything and you're going to go down a rabbit hole. So that's what I would do differently. And the next thing is number 4 is I would feel all my feelings. When I got diagnosed 8 years ago, I had this very sort of toxic positivity mindset that I didn't allow myself to cry or feel anger or grief. I was suppressing my emotions because I thought that it would help me to be really positive. And I thought I had to be strong. So I just ignored those feelings for the longest time. And ultimately, it ended up breaking me. And I think that's why my fear and anxiety just became so out of control. But what I would do differently this time is I would feel all my feelings. I would allow space for the grief, the sadness, the anger, the fear, the joy, because there's that too. And I would allow that to come up and just pass through me. The next thing that I would do differently, number 5, is I would do self-hypnosis audios. I did this during my journey back to health, and it was extremely helpful for me. I basically would record an audio where I would tell myself things like, I'm healed, I'm whole, I'm doing better than expected, my treatment is going to start working or is working, and it would just rewire my brain. I would listen to it in the morning when I woke up, and then I would listen to it at night as I was going to bed because those are the windows of time when you're in a theta brainwave state. So it's easier to access your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is very powerful. So I noticed that once I started listening to these audios, I was way more equipped, I think, to just go through my day and know that everything was going to be okay. And I wasn't going to allow this anxiety and fear to overtake me. So that was really helpful. And the next thing, number 6, is I would surround myself with stories of hope. I would refuse to listen to anybody or read any stories of anybody who has passed away with this cancer. I would tune in to stories of people who healed themselves, who had extraordinary outcomes. I would read memoirs. I would tune into documentaries. I would go to Radical Remission Stories of Hope. And Joe Dispenza also has on his YouTube channel something called Stories of Transformation, which are all about healing. They're not all about cancer, but it's just a lot of different people who healed themselves, healed their bodies. And it was always like I was feeding my mind with the hope that I could heal. So that would be another thing. Lastly, but not least, is gratitude. Gratitude was super powerful for me in my journey back to health. I can't say enough good things about it, but that also rewired my brain to focus on the beauty and the joy. I felt like it was a lifesaver for me in this like torrential storm. Like I grasped onto this, like I needed this to like basically cope every day. I had a gratitude journal that I would just write every morning and I write all the things that I'm grateful for. And honestly, there's so much to be grateful for, even when you're in the midst of cancer. It's like the people showing up to visit you, the people who are taking you to treatment, the people who are bringing you food. There's just so much care. And for me, it was like one huge love shower that I was constantly like reminding myself of like how beautiful this is, that I just get to be surrounded by family and friends. And I get to receive a lot as somebody who's going through all of this, all these health challenges. So those are the 7 things that I would do differently. And some of those things I did anyway, but I didn't start doing until later. So if I were diagnosed again, I'd start doing all those things from the get-go. Those things were the things that I learned along the way that were really powerful, really big game changers. So if you're going through cancer or you went through cancer, let me know what has been really helpful for you in the comments. Please subscribe if you want to get future videos. And if you know anybody who's struggling or dealing with health challenges or cancer, feel free to share this video.